Welcome to this micro training, which I am calling Get Out of Your Board Box. And I'm going to do a series of these trainings over the next coming months that are called Get Out of the Box trainings, different ways of solving problems. As some of you may know, I'm a big fan of sometimes when you have a big challenge, a great solution is just to find a different approach altogether, and then you no longer face a lot of the obstacles that you were facing from where you started out. For those of you who don't know, I'm Sarah Olivieri. I'm a #1 international best-selling author, former executive director and creator of the Impact Method, and I love helping nonprofits change the way they operate so they can really thrive. And what do I mean by thrive? I mean making a huge impact without the overwhelm and burnout that so many people struggle with. So without further ado, let's hop into our micro training for today. I'm sliding over because I'm actually going to edit some slides live with you today. But here's the topic that I want to dig into. And at the end, I'm going to take questions. The questions won't be on the recording, but those of you who are here live, feel free to join in the discussion at the end. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well as answer your questions. If you're watching the recording, you can leave your questions in the comments and I will come around to them or leave your thoughts and ideas there as well. I hear this all the time, that people really need to grow their boards. Maybe I attract them, but I talk to a lot of nonprofits whose boards are maybe down to the minimum number or almost down to the minimum number, and they can't seem to get new board members. And sometimes it's that their board is so small and the work is so large that they can't even attract candidates, because candidates who would be good board members take one look at them and say, well, call me back when you've got things grown a bit and in line a bit. So these are the things that I hear. People need fresh blood on their board. And a couple of symptoms that go with this, so they're kind of like this self-fulfilling cycle, right? Your board training always falls to the bottom of the list. Board members who aren't trained have a harder time fulfilling their duties, and then they're more likely to leave, and then you have a situation where you're less likely to be able to get new board members. So that's another thing that I see happening a lot. So how can we just change our approach completely to this issue of growing our board? Come on over here. We have the board box. And what do we tend to have in this board box that the board is accountable for? This is usually required by law. They are liable for the organization. Often we tell them they're also going to be being accountable for visioning or planning for the future. And then, let's not forget about financial oversight. We often are asking them to do that as well. You know, I was going to type these out for you, but then I made them in advance. So we're going to just pop them all in here. Adding new board members. So often there's a governance committee or a nominating committee that has the job of finding new board members. And then there's the process of training those new board members, making a board manual, an onboarding process. Often then we task the board with fundraising. Oh, there's so many here. Let me just bring them all up here. What else is in our board box? This box is so full. We've got leadership oversight, managing that relationship between the board and the executive director, sometimes monitoring other leadership, fundraising. We're just going to move up here because everything practically can't all fit in my board box here. Other governance duties, oh my goodness. And sometimes I see marketing, and I know there's one hanging down here because I wrote programs. Some boards are even responsible for keeping an eye on programs. So come on up here, programs. Join the crowded board box. Now, we almost can't see what's going on here. So for those of you who are doing the impact method, or those of you who are thinking about implementing the impact method, I'll tell you that those people were not doing this. They're not doing this. They're definitely not doing this. So they have a little more, and for the most part, the team is actually carrying the load for this, so this isn't so much in their board box. If you want to know why we aren't dealing with those things on boards for organizations who are doing the impact method, let me know. Apply for a call. We can have a one-on-one conversation, or if you really want me to do a training on it, I'd be happy to do that. But here we're left with still a lot of things in our board box. So these are the two, training board members and adding new board members, that we're going to talk about right now in this micro training. So here's what I want to say is that now the laws that govern what your board has to do are state by state. So you should check with your state's laws for charities, nonprofits, and what their boards must or must not, or must do, or specific things that they must not do. And there definitely is some variance state to state. Typically, though, boards are liable for the nonprofit. So we can't get this out of the board box. But typically, boards are not required by law to be self-fulfilling, self-nominating boards. That's not a requirement. It's just a common practice. So why don't we just take this work out of the box? And while we're at it, we could take this work out of the box too, possibly. So what do I mean by that? Well, there is very little reason, unless your state specifically requires boards to be self-nominating, but I'm not aware of any states that are. Given that, though, I have not read every state's nonprofit laws. They're quite lengthy. But you certainly could have a separate non-board committee, sometimes called a committee of the corporation. That's what they're called in New York State, that is responsible for finding new board members. This does not have to be the role of the board itself. You can have a committee of supporters. You could have a committee of people who really represent the people that you serve, and you could have those people doing the outreach to identify new board members. And at the same time, you could have that same committee, or you could make another committee that's responsible for training new board members and current board members. Now, depending on the size of your organization and the size of your community, it might make sense to have this be the same committee. But for example, if I'm thinking of, many of the human service nonprofits I know who oftentimes serve underprivileged, underrepresented, or disenfranchised communities, I would definitely stack my committee for finding new board members. And this is not a board committee. Remember, now we're talking about a separate committee outside of the board. I would fill them with the kind of people who we serve and other thought leaders in the area who would help me find new board members. Now, what's an advantage to this that you might not have thought about? I can tell you myself as a nonprofit consultant, I've been asked many times to join boards, but typically I don't, because my day job is doing a lot of the work that many board members do. It's not really a great fit for me. And I really keep my allegiance to my clients and the larger group of nonprofits who I serve. So, but a benefit of this is I proactively keep an eye out already for potential board members who I stumble across, retired executive directors, other amazing people, and I tend to refer them to the nonprofits I know who are already looking for board members. So this is the type of committee that I might be willing to serve on, even though I'm not willing typically to serve on somebody's board. So you could have a lot of people who'd be willing to do this and might be great at this, who wouldn't necessarily be on your board. This also opens up many opportunities to promote having a diverse board, which many people are looking to do. Now, what about this training the board and educating the board committee? I think some great members for this committee might be retiring board members, people who've just left the board, might not want to be cut off completely. They might want to have some relationship on their way out, and it might make a really great way to maintain organizational history and do that. Of course, there are many other groups, but by taking some of the work and pulling it out of the board box, if it doesn't legally have to be in there, you open yourself up to tapping a new group of people. The last thing I'll say on this is one thing that I know about making committees or task forces, or even departments inside your organization highly, highly effective is the more clear and specific their purpose is, the more effective they will be, and the more likely you will have a very strong team in them. So by having one committee that's just focused on making sure board members are trained, you will have lots of people say, yes, I will do that very specific thing, and they will probably do it very well because their focus will be singular. And same with finding new board members. I hope you found this helpful. I will certainly be doing more out-of-the-box solutions micro trainings. But if you'd like to have a one-on-one conversation with me about your specific situation, I invite you to go to pivotground.com/apply, and you can apply for a free consultation with me.